Look, I understand your skepticism. Another crisis warning from an economist. You've heard this before. Political instability, nothing catastrophic happens. I felt the same way until 3 hours ago when financial intelligence crossed my desk that I've never seen in 30 years studying monetary crises. I'm putting my reputation on the line tonight. If what I'm about to tell you doesn't trigger market corrections within 72 hours, screenshot this and remind everyone Raghuram Rajan was wrong about the most dangerous crisis of my career. America is experiencing a constitutional crisis that will devastate global confidence in our financial markets. An emergency congressional session has been called. This isn't political theater, this is institutional economic crisis. Your retirement portfolio is about to feel it. Your portfolio lost value while you slept. Here's what Americans don't grasp about global finance. While you slept last night, your 401k lost real value. Not from inflation data, but because international investors are reducing exposure to a country where the president ignores constitutional fiscal constraints. This morning, for the first time in my career, I issued a public warning about institutional economic collapse. Never before. Not during 2008, not during the European debt crisis, never. That alone signals how dangerous this moment is for American economic credibility. The verification challenge. Don't take my word. Right now, call the Congressional Switchboard at 202-243-1221. Ask about tonight's emergency session. Ask about the constitutional crisis surrounding unauthorized appropriations. I'll wait while you make that call. What you'll discover will change how you understand the relationship between constitutional governance and international market confidence. The $47 billion constitutional violation. 3 weeks ago, Trump attempted to redirect $47 billion in congressionally authorized appropriations without legislative permission. Not millions, $47 billion. This wasn't budget disagreement. Not millions, $47 billion. This wasn't budget disagreement. This was assault on the constitutional framework that underpins international confidence in American fiscal credibility. Article 1, Section 9 is clear: no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law. Trump ignored this. He moved billions anyway, claiming executive authority over congressional appropriations. When Congress challenged this, he didn't negotiate, he shut down the government. For 3 weeks, America's fiscal operations have been paralyzed. But here's what changed everything. On October 26th, federal judge Sarah Morrison issued an emergency ruling that shocked global financial networks. She declared Trump's actions a flagrant violation of the Appropriations Clause and constitutionally indefensible. Trump's response terrified institutional economists worldwide. He attacked the federal judiciary itself. He declared courts have no authority over his fiscal decisions. That's not a president operating within constitutional constraints. That's an executive declaring himself above the institutional framework that makes treasury bonds the world's safest investment. Why markets depend on constitutional predictability? American financial instruments aren't valuable because of resources or demographics. They're valuable because international investors trust our institutional predictability. Global capital flows into treasury bonds and dollar assets because investors believe in our constitutional governance. They trust fiscal policy will operate within legal constraints, courts will be respected, appropriations law honored. Strip away that trust and trillions in international investment evaporate overnight. I've analyzed every major financial crisis since the 1980s. When international investors lose confidence in institutional frameworks, capital flight accelerates faster than policy responses. We're witnessing early indicators now. The global response that should alarm you. While Americans focus on domestic drama, international financial institutions are responding to signals most cannot interpret. According to my central banking contacts, Putin convened an emergency economic meeting 2 hours ago. Xi Jinping moved Chinese markets to heightened monitoring protocols. They understand what American policymakers are beginning to recognize. America's constitutional crisis represents the greatest strategic economic opportunity for competing powers in decades. When the reserve currency issuer shows its president can ignore constitutional fiscal constraints, every competing power calculates how to exploit that vulnerability. The Republican Party's economic catastrophe. This crisis forced Republicans into an economically devastating position. Defend constitutional fiscal governance or defend Trump's appropriations unilateralism. Reports from October 23rd reveal how destructive this became for market confidence. When Republican senators questioned Trump's constitutional authority to redirect appropriated funds, he exploded behind closed doors. He called Senator Collins' compromise proposal treasonous backstabbing, not privately but on Truth Social for international markets to witness. That public attack on constitutional conservatives sent alarming signals through global networks because it revealed Trump's fundamental rejection of institutional fiscal constraints. If he destroys allies for defending constitutional appropriations law, international investors conclude he'll attack any institutional check on his fiscal authority. The pattern is terrifying. Trump systematically destroys anyone prioritizing constitutional governance over personal loyalty. Sessions, Barr, Pence all discarded when they chose institutional responsibility. Markets despise institutional unpredictability. Then McConnell publicly separated from Trump's constitutional position on appropriations authority. When a fiscal conservative of McConnell's stature walks away from presidential spending claims, it signals to bond markets that institutional Republicans no longer support this administration's approach to constitutional fiscal governance. Trump became a systemic liability to his own party's fiscal credibility. The judicial ruling that changed everything, Judge Morrison's ruling, didn't just criticize Trump's fiscal management. It declared his appropriations violations outright abuse of executive power using constitutional language international legal scholars immediately recognized. When federal judges use terminology like flagrant violation and constitutionally indefensible regarding presidential fiscal policy, international bond agencies and sovereign wealth funds pay extraordinary attention. This transcends domestic politics. It questions whether American fiscal commitments remain constitutionally binding and internationally enforceable. Congress isn't meeting tonight just to address shutdowns. They're determining whether Trump should be removed for violating constitutional constraints on fiscal policy. This is about whether presidents can ignore constitutional spending limitations whenever convenient. The political and economic fallout, market fallout, has begun in ways most Americans can't recognize. Trump's approval ratings are declining rapidly among fiscal conservatives. International confidence indicators are declining measurably. Moderate Republicans panic about 2026 midterms. The party fractures along constitutional lines, MAGA loyalists demanding total Trump loyalty, constitutional conservatives seeking institutional governance return. Democrats received the most powerful economic argument in decades. Trump believes he's above constitutional constraints that make American commitments internationally reliable. They have federal court rulings to substantiate this. Every Democratic candidate will say Trump believes he's above the Constitution, with Morrison's ruling as proof. If this reaches the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Roberts faces the moment he's avoided: court collision with presidential claims of unlimited fiscal authority. If the court supports Trump's appropriations authority, it rewrites constitutional fiscal constraints in ways that terrify international investors, depending on institutional predictability. If it rules against him, Trump will attack the judiciary itself, undermining global confidence in our legal system. Either outcome damages institutional predictability, making American markets attractive to international capital. Why global capital is relocating international investors aren't loyal to American parties. They're loyal to institutional stability and constitutional predictability. They invest where fiscal policy operates within legal constraints, constitutional governance is respected, courts maintain authority over executive fiscal claims. If America becomes where presidents redirect appropriations by decree, where court rulings are attacked and ignored, where constitutional limitations are dismissed as obstacles, international capital will relocate faster than any recession in history. Capital gravitates toward institutional predictability. Thanks to Trump's confrontation with constitutional fiscal constraints, America no longer represents predictability to international investors. My unprecedented warning: I've lived through every major crisis since the 1980s, Black Monday, Asian crisis, Russian collapse, dot-com implosion, 2008 meltdown, European debt crisis, pandemic chaos. Yet I've never issued the institutional warning I'm making today. If America allows constitutional fiscal constraints to be abandoned, international markets will collapse confidence in American institutional reliability, not through panic, but rational calculation. No serious international investor will risk capital where presidents can rewrite fiscal law by decree and attack judges defending constitutional appropriations processes. My 72-hour prediction: I'm going on record with unprecedented certainty. If Congress doesn't act within 72 hours to address this constitutional fiscal crisis, we'll witness the largest institutional capital flight in American history. Your retirement accounts, home equity, social security, all depend on international confidence in American constitutional governance. That confidence is evaporating in real time. The critical moment Congress gathers for emergency sessions. Federal judges are attacked for defending appropriations law. Wall Street holds its breath. International institutions reduce American exposure. Global investors calculate alternative reserve arrangements. Every American sits in the middle of the most dangerous institutional crisis in modern financial history. What you must do now, don't just observe this constitutional collapse. Act immediately. Call your representative now. Congressional Switchboard 202-243-1221. Ask one question. Do you support constitutional constraints on presidential fiscal authority or unlimited executive spending power? Their answer determines whether America remains attractive to international capital or becomes another country where constitutional constraints can be ignored. The next 72 hours decide everything. Will Republicans defend constitutional fiscal constraints instead of Trump's appropriations unilateralism? Will courts maintain constitutional authority over presidential fiscal violations? Will Congress remove a president systematically violating constitutional spending limitations? Or will America allow constitutional separation of powers to collapse, taking international confidence with it? This transcends Trump, transcends elections, transcends partisanship. This asks the fundamental question defining America's financial future. Are constitutional fiscal constraints still binding on presidents, or can executive authority override legislative appropriations whenever convenient? History is written through your congressional call. International markets watch whether the country that built financial dominance on constitutional predictability can survive a president believing he's above constitutional fiscal constraints. I'm risking everything on this analysis. If I'm wrong about the next 72 hours, screenshot this, share everywhere, remind everyone Raghuram Rajan was completely wrong about the most important crisis of our era. But if I'm right, if Congress moves toward constitutional enforcement, if markets flee American uncertainty, if constitutional fiscal governance hangs in balance, remember this moment. This could mark the end not just of a presidency, but of institutional reliability that made American markets globally dominant. The constitutional clock ticks. America's economic credibility hangs in balance. Your congressional call might save our constitutional framework and your financial future. Make the call now.